The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. This could be the aspiring advertising professional looking to break into their first job. This could be for the mid-level looking to break through to that next promotion. And of course, this could be for the marketing folks who are looking to break through and find their next agency partner. Essentially, we do this every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. And this week, we welcome Craig Mangan. Craig is a partner and ECD at Barrett Hofherr, based over there in San Francisco, the Bay Area. I love his story. He started out in Omaha, Nebraska, and he's built this career at some renowned agencies, including Goodby Silverstein Partners, BBDO West, and he even founded his own agency, FunWorks, which we'll talk about. But stick with me here because it gets really interesting because he started in the account track, and he tells a story how he transferred from the account track to the creative track. And this is something that we get a lot of questions about. Is it possible? And it's not something I hear very often in this industry. So I'm really pumped for you guys to hear this experience on how he went into the Goodby Silverstein and Partners executive office and had those conversations and broke his way into the creative journey. So good episode for everybody, whether you're breaking in or ready for that next leap. Craig's story is going to help you out. If you like what you hear, which I'm sure you will, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and then follow us on LinkedIn. These things help us immensely to grow and to continue to get amazing guests like Craig on the show. All right, let's do it. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Craig Mangan, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me, Gino.
I am pumped.
I'm waking up. I just took a couple sips. So.
There we go. Sips of what is the question?
You will never find out. No, it's just straight up coffee.
Nice.
That's all. I wish I had a better story, but
no, that's okay. I appreciate the honesty. You could have went a couple funny comedic directions there, but
yeah, I dropped it. Right.
So
I'll save him.
Craig, I'm pumped to talk with you today. You're ECD partner of Barrett Hofherr, which is an amazing agency. You are based around the San Francisco Bay Area. Is that correct?
We are in San Francisco, actually, right downtown in a financial district. Yeah.
Wonderful.
We're like 3 blocks away from Goodby Silverstein, which is where Jamie and I met. So
yeah,
I'm bringing it all back full circle.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska.
Stop it.
Places. I swear to God, I did.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I moved out to California right after college in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
Long time. You can now do math to guess my age.
I've got family in Omaha, and
oh, you do?
I do. And
oh, nice. Do you ever get back?
I went when I was younger. They want me to visit. I want to visit. Definitely want to see a College World Series. Shout out to my Aunt Donna.
You should. Aunt Donna, that my mom's name was Donna. So
there we go.
Hopefully, maybe we're more related than we know.
It could be. And you went to University of Nebraska, I see here. Did you keep up with the football program?
I do. Yep, I get back. I try and get back for 1 or 2 games a year. It's been a slog the last 15 years.
You're busy. We'll get into that. And
and they haven't done very well. We grew up all, loving this team because it was, the top of the chain, and the last 15 years has been a big drought.
Right. What is it? Tom Osborne. And I'll do this one little connection here, and then we'll really dive in. But I don't know, you might know the last name Westerkamp, but my Jordan Westerkamp is cousins with my best friend and co-founder of Breaking and Entering. So.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I know a lot of he was a wide receiver for everybody listening, but let's get back into it. So I want to know, I think we have a lot to learn in this episode. Your creative journey, your advice, you did mention before that you like to talk about the advice for senior level professionals and creative agencies, breaking through that ACD role, maybe that first like creative direction-esque role, which I definitely want to get into. But for now, let's start right from the top. Like, tell us, Craig, about yourself, who you are, what your role is today, where you're doing it.
Yeah, so I am partner in ECD at Barrett Hofherr, like you said, and we just got acquired by Barrett Hofherr. It's super fresh, right off the press. I literally started October 1st. So it's really, really fresh, but at the same time, it's kind of a reunion of sorts, because Jamie and I have been working together. Well, we met each other at Goodby, I think, in 2000. So it's been a long, long time since we've been great, fast friends. And he was my boss forever, and then we were collaborators together. And then when I moved close to him in Oakland together. So, and we've been great friends ever since. And I started my agency and he started his at the same time. And we both, had great conversations on how to make each other feel, safe and heard with going through that journey of having your own agency and going through the trials and tribulations. So it's been a really awesome relationship, and we've always toyed around with like, what if we merged these things, or what if we got back together? And after about 9 years, it finally happened. So it's super fresh, but it's also super exciting. And he has a partner now, as obviously the second part of the name is Hofherr, Matt Hofherr, and that just really excites me too, because he also is an entrepreneur and came from Matejzik Hofherr. And so all three of us have run our own agencies, and it really does feel just great to have that energy and that mindset of like how tough it is, but having people coming from different perspectives, diverse perspectives on the challenges that they faced, and like where we could go going forward. Because you can't be a traditional agency anymore, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, in this conversation. And it's good to have diverse perspectives on like, well, how are we going to make this thing different?
I guess what sold you on this merge or acquisition of FunWorks? And I know you're close with Jamie Barrett, and you worked with him at Goodby Silverstein Partners. But was there what was the business rationale? What were they able to provide? What are you able to? What was FunWorks able to provide in this partnership, this collaboration?
Yeah, so FunWorks, we can get into why we started that, but that was basically coming out of, we started FunWorks because we just felt like the traditional process was just screwed. This was 10 years ago, we were feeling that, and it still is that way, but we're all still figuring out ways of doing it. But we felt like everybody was saying a lot of the same things, everybody meaning other agencies, be brave, be confident, or, be bold, and break through work. And it felt like the sea of same, and that wasn't really getting at the heart of the issue. The heart of the issue to us was the process and the way that we're interacting and collaborating together, which was pretty scant to none with clients. And we came from sketch and improv, the founders of FunWorks, and we were always kind of like, why are we doing this creative process so differently than you would in this? Because it just this process feels so slow and expensive and acrimonious at times. It just felt like there wasn't a lot of great energy. There was when we were growing up in the industry. It was great. But as things progressed and media became more complicated, clients' problems became more really, super difficult on their end as well. It just that there was much, much more tension. So FunWorks was all based in like, how can we bring in techniques, processes, and collaboration like design thinking and stuff like that to work with clients in a new way to get to way better work way faster. And we had a lot of success doing it. My two partners wanted to go off and try and develop software for this process. And so they started another company called Fundamentum Labs. And we still collaborate all the time. We work together. We facilitate workshops together. But their business focus switched from marketing to almost like corporate consulting of like, how can teams work better together? And so I took over FunWorks and we kind of hit a ceiling. I miss just having partners. You know, I felt myself hitting a ceiling because I was just like, I just really want like-minded partners that love being in this business, that love being in advertising and see a future for it. And that's when the conversations with Jamie and I just got way, way better. And then I met Matt and he has so much energy around the future of advertising. And their motto is optimism always. And one thing with FunWorks, it was really tough was like it convincing clients that the value of fun. You know, it was always like, fun, what's that? You guys make fun of your work? Or it was kind of an onion to talk about the value of fun. We always thought fun works because it gets you to better work faster. But optimism always, the way that Matt and Jamie talk about it, is actually a kind of a better way of talking about it. It's like quicker. It just, I don't think anybody can say, being a business leader or anything, that you would question the value of optimism. Sure, there's value in cynicism, but you know, you can't be creative unless you're optimistic in some sort of way. So, it just felt like a really good merge. And then when we started talking about like the future of advertising and where it's going, they're just as excited about like how to fix those problems as they are about the work, which I think you have to be now. Like everybody needs to be that. And so that's what led to like us going like, this is a really good opportunity for all of us.
Yeah.
So because I think we all want to grow and scale and have an opinion about things. And to have partners that are excited about that is how to do it. So.
Gotcha. So what is your role now today within Barrett Hofherr, and how are you operating within this ecosystem?
Yes. So yeah, I'm a couple things. I'm ECD first and foremost with Todd Eisner, Jamie's chief creative officer. We're under him. We run all the accounts. Mm-hmm. For the most part. We split them up. We're still trying to figure all that out. So yeah, we're creative directors at heart. I'm also having a role of like, well, how do we collaborate with clients creatively in a way that gets more momentum faster? So that's a huge passion of mine. So I'll continue to do that. And then I work with Matt and my other partner from FunWorks, Fia, who came over. Me and her and Matt run new business as well.
Oh, nice.
So it's, yeah.
Is there like a sweet spot, like a type of category of a brand that you guys could easily rock besides them all? Like one that maybe you're passionate about?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I do like saying like, I like them all, but I do think like entertainment, like we're really great at video games. ESPN was a big client of ours. We worked with Sony for a while. So I do like being in entertainment. CPG, I really love because there's so much, that whole industry is totally gone upside down. It's insane how many small emerging brands and what you can do out of a kitchen and how fast you can grow. So I love being in that. I would say it's probably those two things are my sweet spot.
Gotcha.
We're also, the other thing I would say we're really good at is we're good at like big hallway clients that like might have some alignment problems. So like Amazon's a big client of ours and Ubisoft's a big client of ours, and those are different verticals, but they're kind of the same in some situations because they have these huge teams and they're all kind of disparate, but then they're always kind of switching to different teams. And so you're kind of finding misalignment, or they have a hard time getting some momentum going in certain areas, depending on what team you're with. And we just love fixing or helping those problems, like making, So I think we do really well with big organizations who just, it takes so long to move them and shift because there's just so many moving parts. I think we do really, really well with those companies.
Gotcha. So is it safe to say this is a full service creative agency, or do you have does Barrett Hofherr have a different label approach, like workshop of some sort? How do you guys go?
Well, yeah, we do. We do have we do all the traditional things. I think we just don't necessarily do them traditional. So things that we do different. We don't do this all the time, but FunWorks always did, and now we're trying to figure out like what clients like working this way or not. But we think strategy and creative are very, very linked together. So that's just one instance of where we kind of break down the silos. So like advertising can be so siloed, and you can imagine, we all learned this when we were kids, but it can be a very expensive game of telephone if you silo things. So you tell one person one thing, then it goes down the chain and things start morphing and changing in ways that what was important up top kind of gets lost. And so we try and keep things much, much more collaborative. We call it diverge and converge. So we get a group of people to really hit a problem. And then the people who are good at crafting or whatever discipline they have can be aligned with the people that we're trying to make momentum with. So that's one thing that we do wildly different. Like we have workshop sessions up front where we have strategy, creative, consumers, clients, us all in a room, and we're going after strategic hunches. So rather than getting a brief that has a strategy on it, which could break apart if it flows into the creative department, we like having like hunches that are just, they're not set in stone, they're clay, so you start playing with them a little bit and you start seeing like what things are kind of interesting. What are either themes or small seeds of ideas, or what are consumers kind of gravitating towards? And it really creates conversations that the client has with each other, even themselves and the consumer, that they would have never had before until probably round 2 or round 3, when the agencies tripped over themselves and presented something that's not right and we don't get it, type of things. Then we start having those conversations, but we really should be having those conversations way up front. So we really love investing a lot of time on the front part of the process. So the back end of the process goes much, much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. I've said this quote a couple times, but it reminds me, I believe it was Abe Lincoln. He said, if you gave me 4 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend the first 3 sharpening the axe or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He was a great copywriter, Abe.
Yeah.
He was really
he was good. He was pretty honest too, which helps.
Yeah.
All right, Craig, I want to kick it back now. The name of this podcast is Breaking and Entering. So I want to understand, where were you? This is a 2-part question that I like to ask people, mainly because it reframes and lets people know that we're in advertising and it's a fun industry. But the first part of the question is, at what point, did you realize you wanted to make ads for a living? Where were you? What were you watching? Was it a commercial of some sort? When did you decide ads was your calling?
Yeah. I mean, when I was growing up, ads were such a big thing, and there were a few agencies that were doing it really, really well. I think, I remember Where's the Beef was watching that with my family and seeing my whole family laugh at that. And I always knew I wanted to just do something fun and make people laugh like that. I thought about becoming an actor for a long time and like doing a lot of things where I could directly do that. But then, you know, as I went into college, there was an advertising department there, and I was like, oh, that sounds pretty good. And I don't know if I'll ever do advertising, but at least that'll be a fun thing to major in college. But when I got in there, I really did start understanding the discipline of it. They had strangely a great department in Nebraska, and it was really fun. And so I even then when I graduated, I was like, man, I'd love to do it, but I just don't know if I'd ever get in. And then I moved out to San Francisco I have family out here, and I ran into this. I went to a party, and there was a woman there who I was looking for a job, and she was like, I actually have a job at Foot Cone and Belding. I was like, what's Foot Cone and Belding? She's like, it's a big advertising agency. I was like, no way. I was like, I graduated in advertising. She's like, okay. So the job was going into a closet and rearranging all of their laminates. Back then you laminated all of your ads, and they just had shit tons of ads. They would just toss them into this giant closet. And they were like, can you figure out how to sort this in some way? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I started going through these laminates, and I just was like, I just fell in love, you know, because it was like, I don't know, it must have been like 10 years of ads in here that I was just like, oh, I just started seeing like what was good, what was bad. And meanwhile, all the creatives and account people would be walking in there, and they're like, what are you doing? Because they're trying to find stuff. So I met them, and then I'd have great conversations with them and became friends with them. And I always say this about advertising. It's kind of high school with cash. So it's like, the more you get to know people, the more you talk. I mean, you know this, Gino, you're doing a great podcast. You know, the more you talk with people, you know, the more doors open. So that's when I really truly fell in love with advertising. Then is when I started really literally touching the work and meeting all the people in the industry.
That's like a perfect first time job.
Yeah, it really was. It was cool.
You're literally studying the ads, and you're in an agency, meeting all the people looking for the ads, and you would have to imagine that would be the creatives, mostly that are like trying to get inspiration or find the stuff that they made. So I guess then when you were combing through those ads, organizing them as like an archivist, what role called out to you? What did this inspire you to want to pursue? Yeah,
I did want to be in the creative department, but I was like, I just don't. I saw all the politics and all the like. It was such a weird stature being a creative back then. It was just like everybody was like, "Oh, the creative department." So they're like the account people would just be like, they're very, gentle around them, and they had this like stature, even though they, wore. It was weird because everybody else was dressed up sharp, and the creatives were dressed in t-shirts and boots. I just was having a hard time understanding like why do they have such stature? And then you realize, oh, they're the creatives. They're the ones that come up with the ideas. And, there's this, some sort of magic around them, which is kind of obviously bullshit. So, but for me back then, I was like, God, that's so hard to achieve. It must be hard to achieve. So I always was like a little shy around it. I didn't know if I could actually enter it. So, anyways, I found my way into the account department. So I became a account manager and grew in that, and then went to Butler Shine and became account manager there. And then I went to Goodby and it was an account person for over 8 years at Goodby.
Wow.
And climbed all the way to group account director.
Holy crap.
Working on Got Milk and Nike and
you were there. I'm not sure when did Got Milk launch, the original, like the first round?
I think 93 it launched, probably right around there. It launched a couple years before I'd gotten to Goodby.
Gotcha.
And then
so
I
you're
worked
probably
on that.
there through the thick of it then. Like,
Yeah.
when it was really starting to hit pop culture and celebrities were doing those.
Yeah, it was awesome. We got, we had so many stories from that. And I also got to work directly with Jeff.
Yeah.
So our client, Jeff Manning just wouldn't allow anybody else on his business other than Goodby. And they were pretty tight. They were pretty close friends. But Jeff and it was a very small team. So it was just me, Jeff, a creative team that would come in and out. But for the most part, the stability was me, Jeff, and there was another account person on it as well. But so I got to know Jeff really, really well during that time. And in that time at Goodby, it was such a fun place. I can't describe the culture. You probably had a lot of people on here that were there, but the culture to me was like, it felt very Saturday Night Live, like whatever Saturday Night Live would be in your head. It was kind of like that. It was like everything was fast. Everything was super competitive. Everything was just, you were just in an emotional charge. And then they were also always pushing to like make fun of each other or be rebellious or that. And we had these kind of very famous Christmas videos that we would do all year long. People would be waiting for these Christmas videos, which in the essence were basically just roast videos. And the first time I saw him when I got to Goodby, I was like, oh God, that's what I really, really want to do. I want to do that. And so the next year I came back with like 4 Christmas videos, and I was so into it when I was making them. But when I went to the Christmas party, I was like, oh shit, this is going to get shown to everybody. And I was so scared, so nervous. And when they showed, they just totally killed. I mean, they would just killed. And Jeff and Rich came running up to me and they were like, oh my God, this is so fun. And gave me a lot of confidence that like, I could be creative in this place. And so it really gave me this rush of like, I can be close to the work and have a valid connection and response to it,
Interesting. So how many years were you working in the account sector within Goodby? Were you was this towards the I worked there 19 years and I was an account person for the first 9. Holy crap.
Yeah. So I was there, and then like I said, Jeff and I worked really close. And what happened was on a Friday I get this call from Allison, who's Jeff's assistant. And it was a Friday at 3. So I was like,
oh, you're getting fired.
Shit, I'm getting fired. So I'm like, geez. So I go up there and hardly anyone's around. And Jeff's in his little side room and he has a bottle of wine. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I really am getting fired. I was like, Jesus. I walk in, I'm like, oh my God. He's like, what are you worried about? I was like, what, am I standing on plastic right now? Am I going to get killed? He's like, just relax, sit down. And he was like, what, do you really want to do this? And I was like, oh my God, you really are firing me. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, do you really want to keep being an account person? I was like, did Manning call? Did our Got Milk client call you? What's going on? What's the problem? He was like, listen, you could keep doing this. You're fine at this. You're really good at it, actually. But he was like, I really think you'd be a much, much better writer. And I think you should do it. You should go for it. And I was just I'd always wanted to be in the creative department or thought of it, but I always had this imposter syndrome or something. And he just gave me the opportunity to really, be vulnerable and say, I don't know if I can do it. And he was like, I think you can, and I think that's the magic of that place. And the magic of Jeff and Rich is, really seeing talent, but being able to like open it up, and allow people to become, who they are inherently meant to be and the best they can be.
Got it. So you were 6 years as account manager-ish. And then I guess, like, how did he recognize that, the potential to be a copywriter? Were you talking around? Were you getting into some brainstorming sessions? Were you submitting ideas outside of the Christmas videos themselves? Were you manifesting this externally and vocalizing your passion for writing?
I mean, to be honest, I would say 80% of it probably was the Christmas videos.
Okay.
I think it was that. And I think also just working side by side, and I would see him sitting with work and kind of struggling with a script or something. And I might have an idea. We'd riff on it. And he would be like, oh, that's really good. I like that. So I think, it was that it was more or less that it was finding opportunities that were outside of, the traditional way of like, hey, I wrote a script. Will you look at it? I never really did that. I just kind of did stuff that I was passionate about.
Right. And in the account role, you're touching the work, you're approving it, potentially like showcasing the clients, selling it in. So you're part of that process as well. But I think I'm pulling out here that your ability to be in person is so crucial, where you're seeing people work on stuff. You said the culture there was incredible, but I think just one solid lesson: show up to the office, even if you're not in that position that you want to be in. Show up as much as you can. That's what I did. I showed up every single day while I worked at Havas Chicago. Even on the weekends, I would show up. I'm not saying you have to do that, but there's the power of being there, seeing what's going on in these conference rooms, walking into opportunities, literally. So it seems like you got that there.
It's so true, man. And I would say, like, it's such a great point that you bring up, because it's so relevant right now of like everybody's at least flex time, and a lot of people are fully remote, and FunWorks went fully remote because everybody wanted to move across the country. And go back home during COVID. And it does take a toll on culture and opportunities and conversations that would push you forward otherwise. And there's just this like kinetic energy when you're, in the office, and just even if you're just bumping into each other and having rando conversations. And that's another reason why I got really excited to join Barrett Hofherr, because Jamie and Matt are such a huge believers in that and really invest a lot of time. I mean, it takes a lot of time and money to do it now, whereas a lot of companies would just say like, just put that towards tech or more, more employees. But they have a love and a spirit for actually being connected with everybody, and with connection comes bigger opportunities. So
totally. Now, give me some of the cliff notes here as you then transition into the creative department at Goodby after, it's kind of a risk. How old were you probably when you transferred?
I know you're perceptive, because I felt like a giant risk to me, because I had risen to a pretty good salary running some big accounts at the agency. And now it's like, all right, now you're going to be a junior copywriter for the most part. And I was like, oh shit, how's this going to go down? I didn't even want to broach the subject. I was just like, I'll just do both. I'll do both, for a while and see how it goes. So the first assignment I got put on was this, probably an inappropriate term right now, called gangbang back then, but it was just like, they just threw all the creatives on it at once. It was like 30 of us for these, Michelob spots. Michelob was a new client we had Budweiser or one of their agencies, and they gave us a Michelob assignment. So Jeff and Rich were just like, let's try and grab that piece of business. And they threw all of us on it. What
is it, like a jump ball? Like where everybody gets that opportunity. Ball.
That's a more appropriate term. Thank you, Jimmy.
I like that. That's funny.
So a big jump ball. And so we all are writing scripts. Al Kelly and John Soto were the CDs on it, and who are good friends of mine. But there were so many people involved. And I just wrote some scripts. I wrote, I don't know, probably 4 or 5, and threw them into the pile, and I never thought anything of it. And I got a call from Soto, like on the way back from the meeting. He was like, he was like, they liked 3 scripts and 2 of them were errors out of the 15 we presented. And I was like, no way. And I was just like, man, that's so lucky. That's so lucky that I got that opportunity, which it was. But I also think I quickly learned this. I started selling scripts much, much faster than juniors. Like I became a senior writer very, very fast because of the account management part.
Oh yeah.
The account management part made me go like, we got to hit this here, or we got to have this part here, or we have to have some explanation here of why this is that, and not just going, well, it's really funny when the rabbit pulls his hat off. It's not conversations like that. I knew that inherently. And so my scripts reflected that. But then when I got in the room with clients, I was able to really talk about their business and why this script was right for it. And
totally.
And so that really, really helped. That would be one of my biggest advice for anybody emerging, is being very, very curious about the business that you're working on and making sure that you have very valid reasons for why you're doing certain things in your work. It'll go so much farther. You'll have so much more success if you're able to connect with a client, not just on like a breakthrough, brave way of thinking, but like a real solid reason for why this bravery makes sense.
Right. Right. That makes sense. And then you were able to sell a little bit. You sell more ideas, sell more scripts, more concepts, and you were able to. The thesis that Jeff had of you being a good creative proved true, and you kept excelling. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing with Jeff too, is that Jeff is he is so good at connecting with business leaders because he's really curious about their business and the success of their company. And so I think, yes, he loves being creative, but like that other part is what's really made them as successful as they are. So Jeff's like that too, or Rich is very much like that on the businesses he works on. And so I think they saw that, and that's really what makes a great creative. One that is very curious about the strategy, about the business at hand, and like what is real success.
And where do you meet Jamie Barrett throughout this?
Jamie came in, I think it was around 2000. I think that's right. He came in, and I remember the first day I knew of Jamie. He was actually in this book called, what's that Whipple book?
Hey, Whipple Squeeze This.
Yeah.
We've had Luke Sullivan on. Yeah. Everybody go listen to that.
Luke. Yeah, right. It's such a great book. And, Jamie was in there all the time, and I was like, oh man, I really love this guy's stuff. And then I always watched from afar, and then there was talks that he was coming in, and I was like, oh shit, that would be really cool. Cause I was just a fan of his work. And I remember being outside Jeff's office, and he had a back then we had fax machines. On the fax machine came, some scripts he just tossed in for eBay. Cause we were pitching eBay at the time, and I was just dying laughing. Like he had some really, really good ideas. And so I just became really enamored with his work first. And then I totally remember the first day I met him. I was sitting in my office with Renee Cornroy, and he walked in, and he wasn't wearing shoes. He just was in socks, and he was like, hey, how's it going? What's your name? And he was really personal. And I was like, I'm Craig Mangan. I knew who he was, obviously. And, and he sat down, and he was like, so what's going on? He just, what about you? What are you doing? Like, he was just really curious and super funny, and we hit it off right away. And, shortly thereafter,
were you like, no,
you would think, especially when he goes into the bathroom without wearing shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's puddles and stuff. You gotta be careful.
He has magic socks. They don't smell as much as you'd think. So from then on, I was in his group, and I was in Jeff's group, and a little bit in Steve Simpson's group, and at the time, and then when Jamie and I just hit it off so well, and we got so much momentum with eBay and Comcast that I ended up just being almost solely in his group. I worked still with Jeff every once in a while, but for the most part, 90% of my time was with Jamie from then on.
Got it. That's incredible. Yeah. I think studying up, knowing the industry, like people that are successful in the industry. You were familiar with his work, so when he showed up, you had an idea who he was. You did your homework. You have taste. You've developed that along the way. I'm just really happy to hear that, even though he was really good at the time and still is, but when he showed up, that he was a good manager. I think that's always great too. Sometimes you meet your heroes and it doesn't go too well, but not in this situation.
Yeah, not at all. And I learned so much from him and still do to this day. I mean, you're right. Not only is he's one of the best writers, but he really does connect and I think he just feels like connection and friendship and good-heartedness all goes together with great creativity. And, that's just always been his ethos. And I've always I've felt such a kinship in that. Yeah. So it's great that it's all come back around and we're actually kicking it again. So
nice.
Exciting.
Nice. And I'm looking at your LinkedIn here as we kind of get closer towards the end of this podcast. I see, a stint at BBDO, their West division as an ECD, and then you started FunWorks. So real quick then, just give me the frame of mind that you were going through when you decided to start FunWorks. I think you alluded to it already, the fact that you saw the industry was kind of flawed in the processes. But what made you want to start that agency?
Yeah, I think it was everything that you just said, the flaws and that, and I thought there might be a different way, but I think the biggest thing for me was just there was a giant frustration, and I don't want to say hate, but yes, almost, it was making me go like, how can you go 5, 6, 7 rounds with a client and not sell something? How can you not? I mean, think of all the time and the money and the morale that you're wasting.
Morale's
over and over and over again, just for, I don't want to just call them ads, because they really do help drive business. But in the end, they can't be that inefficient. If it's that inefficient, you waste all those things, and especially morale. And a lot of people were just getting really jaded with the industry, and it's just like not fun. And so I was like, that's a reason why you'd be in this. I have no idea why you do this business unless you're having some sort of fun or enjoyment out of it. So I just was like, I want to try something different, because I don't see any other agencies. I see agencies saying they're being different all the time, but I didn't see how they were being different, and I certainly didn't see different results. Like everybody was still going 5, 6, 7 rounds. And then I found out really quickly that a lot of these agency models were they become profitable the more rounds and rounds you go. And so they're really like incentivized for this process, these behaviors. And so even though they were saying like, no, we want morale to be great, we want a great creative culture or whatever, the business model was actually supporting the ill effects of what everybody was feeling. So I think overall, I was just like, I wanted to get creative on like how to solve these problems, not just make great work. So with FunWorks, we threw out every playbook. We looked at everything that we hated, and we were like, how do we fix it? There's a great ad, Honda Rev, it's just all about hate. You hate something in order to make it better. And that was kind of our mantra for the industry. We were like, I hate this, so how are we going to go fix it? One of those things that I talked about was the workshop of strategy and creative not being siloed in the traditional process. How do we make sure they're totally in sync, and how do we make sure clients are accountable for that brief, not just, well, let's see what happens and cross our fingers. Like, everybody needs to be accountable and responsible. So we made that happen. I'll give you another example of this hate thing. Anybody, when you present to clients, a lot of times what they do is they'll have a group of them, 4 to 5, And they'll always, and a lot of agency, almost every agency does this and has forever, which is they go, well, what do you think of the work? After presenting for like 45 minutes. And the process usually goes, well, let's start with the youngest person in the room. And so they feel included and see where it goes. And then they usually go up person to person to person, and it ends up going to the decision leader, either VP or CMO. The first person doesn't really know what to say, but everybody wants to give them their room. So they'll say something that's like, well, I didn't like this, but I loved that, or whatever. And then the next person's like, I agree with so-and-so. And then they just pile on, and you just get this hodgepodge of bullshit because everybody's trying to respect each other, but nobody's really getting to their core sentiment. And so what happens is you're guessing if that meeting went well or not. And then what likely happens is the next day an email comes over with just a shit ton of notes or requests to Frankenstein different ideas. We love what you did over here. Loved what you did over there. Can you combine the two? Just terrible feedback. So I was like, I hate this feedback process. So Kenny, my partner, Kenny White, and I came out of one meeting where that happened. And I was like, we have to fix that. And so we quickly developed an app. It was like super rudimentary called Gut Check, where now when we go in and present work, it's a in real time app where instead of going like, what did you think of the work? As we're presenting it, when an idea is done, we say, okay, open up the app, quickly answer these 2 questions. Did it answer the brief of blah, blah, blah? Will it resonate with your consumer? Blah, blah, blah. And maybe do you like it? But mostly what's in the brief? Like, to ask them the questions of the brief, because that's what they're judging, not how they feel about things, not how they, like or don't like cats. Like, it's more about the brief. It's all anonymous and in real time. And so when you're done at the end of the meeting, what you say is, what you just did, you're not voting on things. We're having a great conversation. So we pull up the scores, and if their team is aligned, either they love it or hate it. If they hate it, we don't spend our time selling. Right, if they love it, that's great. If they love it, let's talk about how to make it better, or how we might move forward with those directions.
I love that.
The best part is if they hate it and they love it and there's a giant chasm, then they're not aligned. And that's where you go rounds and rounds. And you're not holding them accountable because they're not aligned on the brief. So what we say there is we can't move forward unless we have a conversation on why you guys aren't aligned on the brief.
Damn.
And that saves a ton of time and money. And clients are really reluctant at first, but they love it when they see it because it confirms how their team is deciding on things. It lets them know, can I trust certain team members with this or that? Or it starts conversations with their team that they wouldn't necessarily have before. So clients really love it. And that's just one other example of what I'm talking about. Of like, you have to look at things in this process in the industry and find out what you hate about it and get creative on how to make it better.
I love it.
And so
that's genius.
I find a ton of passion in it.
That's genius. I think I've never heard of anybody talking about that process. I think that's so important. I think that your account management background and that might help too. And but all of your experience there. Is there anything else, like quick advice that you have, maybe to the senior level copywriter or art director that feels like they're in this endless cycle of just creating work and they want to get to that next level? I think we alluded to that earlier, but is there any tangible advice you can give to those people?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice I'd have is that a lot of people think that getting those higher titles is worthwhile, and in some instances it is. But sometimes it can be a trap. And what I mean by that is, like, when you get those higher titles, your mind has to shift to other things that you might not want to inherently do. So, I think, I don't know what the stat is now, but when I was growing up, the jump from being a creative to a creative manager, like a creative director, the success rate was about 20%. Because the mind shifts so much. You get out of the work. You're talking way more to clients. You're managing teams. At least that's what it should be. And if you're just getting title for title's sake, and you're just like, you're getting creative director, but you're still just doing the work, it's a facade. And it's really not, you're going to ceiling out because they're going to pay you a creative director thing. And then if you lose that job or move on to somewhere else, and you don't have the real skills that it is to be a creative director now, which is all of those other things, knowing a person's business, knowing about media, knowing about emerging trends, knowing how to manage teams. If you don't know those things, you're going to find yourself in a difficult position. And I see that a lot in the industry now, where people are selling themselves as creative directors. Not only do they not have the skills, but they don't even have the passion to do it. Like, a lot of people like want the title, but they don't want that job. And what I would suggest to people is, like, really have a hard conversation with yourself and go, like, do I love doing the work? And if you do, be really, really great at that, and just be great at the work. Because if you're really, really great at that work consistently, you'll get paid for that. I will pay people top dollar if they are if they are slingers, if they are people who are really, really great and they can slam something fast, I'm going to pay them creative director rates.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they'll go find it somewhere else. And, they're winning awards, and they're getting on breaking, entering advertising. They're talking on this show. They're going to get noticed, and they will.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that. I would tell, if I was crushing it, I'm not creative, but if I was an art director or copywriter, crushing it, doing all the right stuff, selling work, and a boss of mine said, you have to be a ACD or creative director, and I wasn't ready for that, I would say no. I would say I want to keep on making the work.
Yeah.
It's probably a tough decision, tough conversation, but as a manager, I would respect that. Like, good. Well, all right.
Yeah, and I'm not pushing people away to do it. Like, again, it's an honest talk with yourself. Yeah. Don't hold yourself back because of fear. Just hopefully you can.
It's a different
realize
job.
Like what's exactly. It's a different job. It's just different. Yeah.
Do you want the new job within that agency? Managing creativity, finding out those good ideas. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think the other thing now that I would just say is, like, we are on a huge tech wave, obviously. I'm sure you guys talk about it all the time on this podcast, but there are people who push against AI and a lot of the emerging tech. There are people who are somewhat, tipping their toes in the water, but, like, I'm of the ilk of, like, the people who know how to run and stay curious, know how to work it, stay curious about it, and, like, really are becoming more and more experts, are going to be the most valuable people in this industry by far. There's without a doubt. So if you're pushing against it with some sort of fear or something, again, I would have another hard conversation with yourself and others, and just go out and look at, like, what it's capable of doing and how it can help you become great.
Absolutely.
Because I gotta say, once you make that turn, it is fun. There's things to be scared about, for sure. I get it. Don't get me wrong, but it is opening up doors to make things
faster,
so much quicker and faster, and, like, cheaper.
No, you got it.
It's
everybody
insane.
Should be experimenting.
And if you really love making things, and, like, this is the Renaissance. This is the time to be alive if you really love making things.
Totally. Craig, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your story and your advice. How can people reach out to you if they want to continue having a conversation? Maybe they want to work for you, with you. Maybe there's a brand out there that wants to hire you. What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, I'm always on LinkedIn. That would be great. And then you can email me at Craig at barretthofherr.com.
Wonderful. Well, Craig, amazing interview. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, Gino, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And congrats to you on this podcast. Thank you. Cool. You've been doing it this long. It's really cool.
Thank you so much. Not 17 and a half years, but I mean, to do that at one agency, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Take care, Gino. Bye-bye.